Hey everybody, and welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy, your weekly video game news podcast, broadcasting live Fridays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. You can find our show archives on chipbit.net and also on iTunes. So it is Friday, December 29th, the very end of 2017. I'm your host, Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Booge.
Yeah. And tonight's episode is going to be something a little different. It is going to be a retrospective on 2017, the big stories, the big themes, those who left us over this year. And
it's really it's a funeral march is what this show is, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. There's for many things. In many ways, 2017 was a real bad day for the game industry.
In some ways, yes, but there were some amazing games that came out too.
Oh, definitely. There were a lot of good games that came out. I think if you look at just the stuff that came out and one of our other big themes, it was great. It was a great year.
Yeah.
But then you look at a lot of the other themes that we ran into and a lot of the things surrounding game releases, and it was just like, wow, that was bad. All those really bad.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us,
listeners. Let's pull up a chair to the fire and pour yourself a whiskey.
If you're in New England like me, pull up a chair to your space heater and get comfortable with your Afghan. And just and you know what? If you want to chat with us on Twitch, feel free to do that, because I am actually in Twitch, which is not a common occurrence. Usually, I'm too busy looking at stories to pay attention to the feed. I'm going to make an effort to tonight. So
being social, Lex. It's a New Year's resolution.
Yeah,
as if.
So I want to start with some sort of random, interesting stories that happened this year that don't really fit in to a lot of other stuff. And one of them is something that happened, it was a story in January, and it was just this weird little side story then, and I actually totally forgot about it after it happened. I would say with 80% of the stories we do, just left my brain after the week we reported on it.
Yeah. And
it was something that I saw when I was going back through all the articles, and I thought, ooh, I want to look back into this. I want to see if there's an update on it. There kind of was. So, the story I'm referring to is a story we did on January 20th of 2017, and it was about Brianne Wu, who, if you are familiar with Gamergate and that whole kerfuffle, it was like her and Zoe Quinn were the two, and Anita Sarkeesian were the three big targets for the alt-right for a lot of Gamergate.
I think it was before it was called the alt-right.
That's true. Yeah, no, I think
they were just called assholes.
Yeah, you can make an argument that Gamergate was sort of the prelude to what the alt-right now is on the internet. But
the 4chan proving ground.
So she had already been in the news years prior, and the reason why she was even involved in that is because she has developed some games, and it was interesting to see her in the news again, especially under what was happening. Apparently, the initial story we were reporting on was how she was really upset because she had sent a bunch of documents to the FBI about harassment, saying hey, all these people during Gamergate issued death threats against me, and I would really like you to look into it because I'm afraid for my life and the lives of my family, which seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And the FBI basically did nothing. And by this point, she realized the FBI not only did nothing, but was never intending to do anything, and was very upset about it, which led her to decide that she was going to attempt to run for Congress.
Amen. God bless America.
In Massachusetts 8th District.
Oh, it was in Mass?
Shit. Yeah, because she's from Boston, which is also where Quinn is from.
That's true.
They worked together earlier in their careers. And this was interesting Partly, if you know anything about politics, because spoiler, like all the Congress people from Mass are Democrats, and she was obviously going to run as a Democrat.
Right.
Although I guess I could have seen her running as like third party, like a Green candidate maybe. But yeah, so it's like so they're pretty safe districts. So it's interesting. And she was going to have to get rid of the incumbent who was there. But one of the caveats to this story is that election isn't until 2018, the year that's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So she announced she was running, but then there wasn't any news on it in a long time. And I went and I looked up the story and I looked to see if there was any update on it. And there was from kind of recently. It was from the end of October, beginning of November. And what she did was she not only is still running, although I think her campaign website is either down or has not officially gone up yet, either of which would be acceptable because, again, the election's actually still like a ways off.
Mm-hmm.
But she did a Twitch stream to raise money for her campaign.
That's pretty great.
I know, it is pretty great. It's such like a gamer solution to the problem of political fundraising.
Yeah, Patreon. Go to Patreon for campaign fundraising.
And I mean, for those who don't know, just getting into the race to be in a congressional seat in any federal level election, or really any election, but especially federal level election, super expensive.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why mostly rich people are in charge of the country. Did you say 8th district she's running for?
Yes, which is a suburb of Boston.
Yeah, that's tough. It's Quincy. I was just looking it up. Quincy, Brockton. That's going to be a tough one to get.
Yep. And her stream was actually kind of fantastic for the news that was happening at the time that she did this stream, because this was on the eve of Wolfenstein 2 coming out.
Oh, nice.
Or actually, maybe it was right after Wolfenstein 2. Yeah, it was right after Wolfenstein 2 came out. So the whole stream was her and her husband playing Wolfenstein 2 and like talking about politics and the sort of meta going through that of all the stuff surrounding Wolfenstein's 2 release was like too good.
Yeah.
So the the problem with it, with the article that I found on it, twofold. One, if you go, she did not archive the video on her Twitch stream, so I could not go back and watch it, unfortunately. So I could not see how much money was raised if there was a count on the video, which at this point I'm unclear about, because even the article that talks about it on VentureBeat does not say how much money was raised or give any indication of that.
Right.
What it does talk about is how, this was like a new thing to do. No one has ever tried political fundraising in this way.
Because I was trying to figure out how old she is. I think she's like 36 or 37 or something, at least according to the internet. And like, how many people that young run for fucking congressional office? Like,
yeah, not many.
Yeah. Especially not with, backgrounds in video game design.
Mm-hmm. So, and she wants to run on privacy, internet privacy, like anti-harassment stuff. Kind of makes sense, sure. And I don't know, I think having someone on the congressional level who actually understands the internet and technology would be kind of great.
Yeah, no, that would actually be excellent.
So,
especially as we also perhaps barrel towards, congressional decisions on loot boxes and shit like that.
Yes. So I'm really interested to see how that goes in the future, and I'm glad that the news about her running was not just some like offhanded comment she made in the moment because she was upset about the FBI's thing, but it seems like something she's really following through with, because I'm excited to see what happens, and I hope she was able to raise enough money to actually get into the race.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool.
But yeah, so putting that aside, the other rando story, which also has to do with government, one of the things that died this year, although it is not in our RIP list that will be coming up later in the show, is net neutrality. Net neutrality died this year, unfortunately, in the United States.
RIP.
Yep.
Although it's not fully dead yet. They can still be shot down, I think, by Congress.
Yes.
I don't remember.
Congress
I wasn't following it after.
And technically right now there's lawsuits that have been filed
fuck.
that could stymie it further depending on judges' opinions on it.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, nonetheless.
When we first were reporting about this back in February, story from February 15th, where one of the FCC commissioners was quoted as saying, "Fast broadband is a novelty."
Jesus.
What a luxury service that is, they said. This was FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of those things that he said that, and everyone was like, "What a dirtbag! He sucks. We don't like him." And then he won. So,
the dirtbags win.
The dirtbags win. 2017.
Yeah,
in a
that should be the slogan. It sucks. I mean, it's a ways off till we see anything directly affected by that, and we don't know what effect it will completely take, but it is a loss for everyone. To think that someone doesn't think that the internet should be used like a utility is crazy to me. This isn't the fucking early 90s anymore. People rely on the internet for a lot, and it should be treated just like electricity or phone or anything like that.
Totally. And yeah, that's I could talk for the whole rest of the show about net neutrality, but honestly, I assume that our listeners kind of know by now.
Yeah. It's going to be, I mean, specifically to gaming, it's going to be interesting, and I say that word with more than a bit of bile, because I definitely can see rolling out the gamer package for your internet monthly payment that's going to allow you to be able to stream games and play multiplayer at a reasonable rate and shit like that. It's going to be pretty gross, I think.
Pretty gross.
Pretty gross.
2018. Pretty gross.
Pretty gross. Still pretty gross.
What did I have next in my little list here? So this was a really interesting story that didn't really fit in with anything else, but at the time that I reported on it, I thought it was a really big deal. And I still think it's a big deal because of the precedent that it set. But this year saw not only the manifestation of a court case, but the resolution of a court case about printer ink cartridges and being able to for other third-party companies to be able to take those cartridges and tinker with them and like refill them and then resell them or effectively repair them, sort of. So people wouldn't have to buy more cartridges. They could just get the ink refilled and it's good. And initially, the reason why this went to court is because the printer companies that make the printers and the cartridges said, whoa, you can't do that. We need to make the consumers just keep buying cartridges.
Right.
And this other company that was set up to refill them said, whoa, that's not cool. We should be able to run a business where we refill them. It went to court. It was a big thing. And it was settled in favor of the third-party company. And you're probably thinking, why is this a big deal? Why does this matter? Well, the ruling is vague enough that it sets a precedent for repairing of technological devices, and specifically having third-party companies like repair shops repair technology, electronics, stuff like that. And this was something that in the past you could not do with video game consoles.
Right.
The whole deal was the manufacturers were like, oh, well, you have a warranty on this, so if it breaks down within however many years, you can send it back to us and we'll repair it. But if you try and repair it yourself, you crack it open to do that, it voids the warranty. And I can understand sort of how you might not want to have any old person cracking open their console, and the manufacturers would cite concerns about modding and piracy, which is fair. But the other thing that this stomped on was any kind of mom and pop shop repair companies being able to come in and offer their services to repair consoles. And because of this printer ink cartridge court ruling, now those shops can legally exist and do their thing.
Nice. That's fucking rad. I think that's a good
So this was like one of those things that a lot of people overlooked it at the time it happened. I think a lot of people continue to either not remember it or not know that it happened at all. But in terms of video games, in terms of legal good news that happened in 2017, this was actually an easily overlooked and kind of a big deal thing. So it was cool that it happened. I just wanted to point it out, reiterate.
I just as a guy that I print packing labels like most of my day for work, I like the printer thing too because I have to buy a lot of fucking printing cartridges. So that's good for me. I just want to mention, Lex, that that problem that we used to have where you kind of cut out for a solid 10 seconds every little while?
Yeah.
It's happening.
Oh, good. Well, don't worry because it's only affecting you.
Okay.
Because I'm almost positive it's not happening in OBS.
Okay.
Because I have not seen any cutouts. And I know that it's not happening in my Audacity recordings, so...
Okay.
Yeah, it's just you.
Okay. I'll try to make sense of what you're saying. I'll try to fill in the gaps.
Sure. Sounds good. And you haven't been doing that for me at all. So.
Okay. Well.
Although I've not let you get much of a word in edgewise, so maybe that's what it is. Actually, you can take the next topic chunk if you want, which is the first of our sort of...
The big themes.
Theme blocks. We could talk about shitty YouTubers. Which one do you want to talk about first?
We can talk about the Jontron.
Oh, Jonathan.
Tronathan.
His Christian name, yes.
Yes. So it turns out that YouTubers, when you get really popular and start to get a lot of money and attention, it doesn't take very long before you kind of find out some of them are really fucked up people. And that's what happened to Jonathan Tronathan this year. He so if you're not familiar with him, he was formerly on Game Grumps, and he does like a goofy video game related, I don't know, like sketch comedy show. I don't know what you'd call it. And
I mean, his YouTube channel, yeah, he has longer form comedy narratives. They're good. They're well put together.
Yeah. But it turns out that he's kind of like a weird, like, anti-immigrant, like, racist person. Possibly. Basically what happened was he went on a show. What was the name of the show? Basically, he went on a kind of a Twitch talk show with a guy who's a pro gamer, but also does, like, political, like, punditry stuff.
As I recall, it was impromptu. It was like Jontron was saying this stuff on Twitter and like had been saying this stuff on Twitter and people were calling him out on it. And this streamer basically tweeted at him or private messaged him on Twitter and basically said, "Hey, I don't like what you're saying here, but instead of me just yelling at you, come on my stream tonight and we'll talk it out."
Right. Exactly. And he went on there and started talking about this shit and some like really kind of disturbing, ideals that Jontron has started to emerge very quickly. Mostly that it kind of wants like an ethnocentric state for America and believes in like tribalism and that like black crime is like destroying the world and a lot of other things. Almost all of which he debated very poorly and had no facts to back it up. And so, yeah, that was fun for a lot of people to realize that, you know, their favorite YouTuber was a weird racist person. But it didn't matter because a lot of people stuck by him. Although he did lose, I guess, like a good chunk of subscribers. I guess a lot of people don't care. And then we also had PewDiePie, who has had a history of kind of controversial pot stirring. Got into more trouble. This isn't the first time. I think he used to do like Hitler jokes or something, or I can't remember. There was like the last year or the year before he did some other stupid shit. But this year I think the gist of it was, I don't even know if I ever watched the video, but there used to be there is a website called Fiverr where you can basically pay someone to do anything. And he was like trying to be funny, and he's like, "Oh, I wonder if they'll hold up a sign that says death to all Jews if I pay them." And then they did. And that wasn't good. And so basically Disney, Maker Studios, who's owned by Disney, who is basically like a talent management company, I think, they dropped him. And then YouTube dropped his series, his YouTube Red series. That's going to happen. So yeah, but once again, doesn't matter because a lot of people stayed with him anyway. So the moral of the story is, you can be an anti-Semitic, racist weirdo that's really popular on YouTube, and it doesn't matter. You'll still be popular on YouTube.
Yeah, that's one of the downer notes of 2017.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier, I watched an interview with John Tron from a month ago, I think. It was like right after the Matt Lauer news broke, and I don't remember exactly when that was, but that's when that was recorded. It was him and H3H3 Productions, their podcast. Mm-hmm. And they talked to him for a good long time, but they have like a chunk of that video where they ask him about what happened with his controversial statements and like going forward, what happened with him after that. And he was basically like, man, I really should have phrased that stuff better, was the gist of his response.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah. And then they talked about how everyone is so interested in jumping down everyone's throat nowadays. And I was just like, okay, yeah, that's a reasonable argument to make for some controversy to pop up in the media, but like, I listened to that 2 hours of you spewing racist shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a reasonable argument to bring up with you.
Yeah.
So, it was unfortunate. But it really speaks to, I mean, I checked his subscriber counts, and I didn't go back and look at his subscriber counts prior to him saying these things, but I can tell you his subscriber count on YouTube currently is shy of 4 million.
Yeah.
And PewDiePie's I didn't check because I know it's astronomical.
It's like 50 million or some shit like that.
Yeah, even if he lost like 10 million people, it would still be the biggest on YouTube.
Yeah. Let's actually just see. I'm going to find out real quick what his subscriber count is right now.
But I think what it speaks to is this thing that YouTubers...
Jesus Christ.
Have... you found out what it was.
58 million.
Yep. It speaks to this thing where YouTubers are just... they have really... some of them have very large, and I think all of them have really loyal fan bases. Mm-hmm. And they may not function well in the public sphere that a movie star would exist in.
Yeah.
But they can still make millions of dollars doing what they're doing.
Yeah, totally.
And they don't really have to come out into that public sphere. I think the biggest problem that PewDiePie made was signing contracts with Disney and Maker, because he didn't need to do it to get the money, because he already had all this money coming to him. And Disney all it did was restrict the kind of things that he could say and do.
Yeah.
So now that he's detached from them, he's still making piles of money. His main fan base is still there.
His videos still suck.
Yeah. I mean, I maintain that his videos have always sucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's still making tons of money, and the only people that now are not introduced to him is just the average Joe on the street, who, if you asked them if they knew who Jennifer Lawrence is, they would say yes, and they would be able to tell you probably a movie that she was in. And if you asked them who PewDiePie is, they would either say, I have no idea who that is, or I think that's an internet guy.
Right.
And that's all they would say. Well, and it's one of those things where, like, yeah, okay, so he's not going to get into that stratosphere of people knowing him, but he still gets to be a millionaire celebrity. So who cares? Or why does he care? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. These things, they're fine. These people are fine. They're still doing great.
Because at least you said like John Tron is like 4 million or something?
Yeah, when I checked it, I'm pretty sure it was shy of 4 million.
Yeah.
I'll check it again.
John, you cut
to
out
make
again.
sure that I'm, giving you the straight dope.
Sorry, you cut out there.
3.8 million.
3.8. Yeah, I mean, like, for him, I think that, like, something he could crumble. But I've, like, PewDiePie has kind of hit critical mass, I feel, where once you have, like, 58 million subscribers, it's almost impossible not to stay there. You know what I mean? I feel like you can't undo that by any means or something. It's crazy to me. I don't know.
I also think in an interesting way it speaks to, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on it because we're running out of time, but I think it speaks in an interesting way to the way traditional celebrities, a lot of their fame is very much a smokescreen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at Brendan Fraser. Poor Brendan Fraser was a blockbuster star for like a decade, and then just stopped being in movies, and nobody noticed.
Yeah,
and basically
Brendan
just
Fraser.
disappeared. Yeah, and like people, like we talk about him now as like, oh, whatever happened to Brendan Fraser, but like that's how people talk about him. Whereas if you take a person like PewDiePie and he stopped making videos for a month or something, like a significant portion of the internet would lose their minds.
Yeah, well, that's something that happens with JonTron because he makes like produced written stuff, and he sometimes does take like months between videos, and people are like, he's dead, he died. Like, it's crazy.
They really care. So it's really interesting that you have these traditional celebrities that are like, random people on the street would know who they are, but random people on the street also wouldn't care if they disappeared.
Right.
Whereas these people have huge followings and they really, really care about them.
Yeah, it's because it's more personal than watching George of the Jungle or whatever that...
Oh, nothing's more personal than that.
Or that movie where he played the animator where his cartoon came alive. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that one at all.
Or Biodome... No, wait, not Biodome.
With Pauly Shore.
No.
I didn't know he was in that.
He wasn't. I'm thinking of what's the one? Pauly Shore's in it, but he's frozen. He's like a Neanderthal.
Encino Man.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Encino Man. Now he's just the fat guy, Brendan Fraser.
I feel so bad.
He wasn't even in the new Mummy that sucked.
Yeah, he could have made it better, arguably.
Probably
anyone could have.
Yeah,
but so that was those YouTubers. YouTube controversies. An interesting little way that those work.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Lex, you got to try dropping out of Discord and coming back in or something, because it's hard. It's hard on me to understand what's going on.
Okay.
Will that break everything?
That shouldn't affect anything else.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I don't think it will.
All right.
I'm gonna do the same.
Yeah. So. So I'm still talking on stream. And I don't know what we're going to talk about next for our topics.
Just me and you.
It is probably going to be something like, I don't know, probably Nintendo. I think next
we can see Lex is doing things. So this is interesting.
Get excited for that. Yeah, I've jumped back into Discord, and I was just telling the audience that next we're going to probably get into Nintendo, if that's cool with you.
Sure. Do you know what's funny is I was also talking privately to the audience. So it's gonna
you're not. You were
not in Twitch, but in the recorded one. So it's going to sound like a clusterfuck for a little bit.
Great. Yeah. I don't know why you did that. So
didn't think ahead.
Let's talk about some good news that came out of this year.
Yay! Non-racist weird people.
Yeah, I mean, we can debate how Japanese culture is in a way
it's a little
racist.
It's a little messed up. Yeah, they have a bizarre sense of other countries' histories, but I'm not.
But that's not what this is about. This is about the Nintendo Switch, the other big thing of 2017. The little console handheld that could, the thing nobody saw coming. The next in Nintendo's big lineup, we had the first story that we did. Well, maybe not the first story, because we did a bunch of teases as to like what it could be, and there was all those different like specs and things that were leaked, which were funny. Some of them being much more accurate than others. But one of the first stories we did right before it came out about its sales numbers was this really funny one that came out of Forbes, which was entitled, Analysts Predict the Nintendo Switch will have a sluggish start with 5 million sales in 2017.
No analysts.
Man, this story was a great example about how analysts have no freaking clue what they're talking about. They just guess things.
Yeah, more or less.
So yeah, a lot of people prior to the Switch's release, or I should say a lot of business people prior to the Switch's release, were expecting it to bomb because the Wii U hadn't done well.
Yeah. And because
And they
Nintendo's
don't
kind of been on a
understand
downward
that-
movement
Yeah.
for a while.
I think they don't understand that the way Nintendo works is they have a crackerjack hit console, and then they have a less successful console, and they have another hit console,
Well,
and then they have a less successful console.
it's interesting because if you take the Wii out of that equation, they've been on a downward spiral, generally speaking. The Wii was the odd hit. And that's mostly because at the time that was like college kids bringing it home to their parents and grandparents for the holidays. They're like, hey, try out bowling. And then their parents are like, I want to buy one of these fun little bowling machines, you know? Like, that was the weird spike. They've always done great in handhelds, but besides the Wii, they've been on a downward spiral since Super Nintendo. And the Switch is now another anomaly or at least it will become another anomaly once it continues to sell more.
So yeah, they assumed the Switch wasn't going to sell well, and then the Switch came out, and it sold really well.
Yeah. Do you know what? Do you know why? Do you know why, Lex? Do you know why I'm thinking? It's this. The Snap. The Snap does everything.
Oh yes, that was the reason. Just because of a fun gimmick, that was why the Switch did well. That's why any product does well, is just because of a fun gimmick.
Yeah, you just gotta switch it up and snap your fingers and HD Rumble, and there you go.
You can feel 2 ice cubes with these controllers.
You'll feel like you're in the Arctic.
Wow, that was so dumb. So, on March 9th, we had another story where the Nintendo CNBC was predicting, hey, Nintendo's new console's selling so well, we predict that 8 million units are gonna be in the first 13 months.
Yeah.
And that ended up being closer to the truth, although I think it went more than that, right?
Yes. I think so. I don't know why I said that's so weird.
We have another story from May, after it had been out a little while, and it was just like, wow, look.
Wow, hey.
Wow, hey, this is just doing really, really well. So, let's see if I can pull a number out of this. I don't know if I can. I didn't look over all these stories intimately.
Yeah.
I thought I would just remember them, but why would I? I don't know why I would. Yeah. 1.2 million in the first couple months.
Yeah. That's US only too, so.
And US only, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's sold better I think it's sold comparably in Japan, if not better. I can't remember exactly.
Apparently, yeah, no, it did 1.5 million units sold in Japan in the first 26 weeks. Which for Japan is really, really good because it's not a big country.
No, it's not.
So
and they also don't really buy consoles anymore.
No, not anymore.
But this isn't it's a console that's also a handheld, Lex.
I mean, they do love handhelds.
Yeah.
They love that's phones. The weird difference. The weird difference between China and Japan. They both love handheld games, but China is more about smartphone handheld games, whereas Japan is more into like the Nintendo 3DS style handheld system.
Vita, PSP. Even Japan couldn't save the Vita.
No.
It's I think they like their little proprietary devices, maybe. I mean, I like handheld devices too. I think they're fun. China also loves weird MMOs.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Switch was the big success story of 2017. I mean, even talking about their games that came out, one of the things that like I had been talking about prior to the Switch's release, when we knew its launch games and the games that were going to come out like over the summer and into the fall, I had been saying like, hey, Breath of the Wild is probably going to be great. And Mario probably going to be great, but I can't speak to any of the things in between then, and I don't think you can sell a console on 2 games.
Right.
I was wrong.
You're wrong.
Because apparently you can sell a console on 2 games, but also there were a lot of other pretty successful games in there. And the thing that I was hoping would happen seems to have happened, where it has become an indie machine, Nindy machine, if you will.
Which is, I think that's one of the things that's keeping it alive. You have a lot, because I'm a PC gamer, so for me, it's weird to see all these titles kind of get re-shoveled out onto the Switch, years later. But for a lot of people that don't play PC games, are not really familiar with the Steam ecosystem and shit, they don't know what these games are. They've never played this shit before. So I think that's keeping it afloat for a lot of people, in between the big budget titles like Mario and Zelda, even things like ARMS, which I think probably did pretty well. The thing too that you have to realize about the Switch is that the attach rate is crazy. People that own this, almost everyone that owns a Switch bought Breath of the Wild. That attach rate is incredible, and that's always something that's also kept Sony's handhelds alive, is that their attach rate's nuts. Vita players, it sucks that Vita died, but their attach rate was insane. Vita players bought every Vita game, and Switch players are buying every Switch game. They're hungry as hell for content on this little machine, and that's going to keep Nintendo going for a long time.
Definitely. So, good on you, Nintendo. You're one of the only companies that comes out looking good from 2017.
They're always interesting, at least. It's always fun to see, you can never count Nintendo out, Just when you think they're down and out, all of a sudden they come out with this thing. I mean, I was completely wrong about the Switch. Even before I was on the show. Before I co-hosted the show. Yeah, I said, this thing's gonna fucking sink and fail horribly. And I know you and Dan are Nintendo apologists, so you were kind of high on the machine. And I was just completely wrong. It's interesting, the culmination of things that had to come in place to make the Switch as big as it is and is going to continue to be. I think one is that it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a kid's toy like the Wii U did. It actually looks like a real piece of tech. It has that Nintendo pedigree. I don't think any other video game company will ever have the same kind of name recognition and pedigree that Nintendo does. That name alone can push a lot of stuff. And I don't know, I guess from what I've read from people that own it, and you own one too, is that it just works. You snap those things on and pull it off, and it's right on the little screen. You put it back in, it's instantly on your TV. It's just...
And it sort of depends on what you're playing, but for most games, there isn't really a slowdown, not a noticeable slowdown.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because one of the things they do is cap the frame rate, even when it's in dock mode.
Right.
So you don't notice a difference because they're purposefully making it so there isn't a difference.
Right.
But that I think helps in terms of perception.
Yeah.
You also have just the fact that the games are strong, and the way they've been able to stretch the technology, they've been able to do it in ways that a lot of industry analysts and also people who know about tech are just astounded by.
Yeah.
There were reports about Breath of the Wild where they were like, why is Breath of the Wild so small? Why is it so few gigabytes when it's such a huge game? And there were people that could not understand how Nintendo did that. And it's funny because then you see LA Noire came out for the Switch, and it's such a big file that you need to have another SD card plugged into your Switch to be able to download it if you want to not buy a physical copy.
I'll tell you one reason why. It's because Breath of the Wild doesn't have a lot of HD audio, and
yeah, I think that's part. Yeah,
it's still. I honestly think that's one of the tricks that Nintendo has gotten away with for a long time, is that they just don't have a lot of voice acting and HD audio. Whereas games like Mass Effect Andromeda, a large chunk of that file is the audio, and the other large chunk is the textures. And Breath of the Wild doesn't have to worry about either of those.
So yeah, it's good job, Nintendo. Success, you've done it.
Yeah, good Nintendo is good for the whole industry. So
it is, yeah.
You always needed that other person out there. I wonder the longevity of the Switch, because like you said, like they are wizards at compressing things, and I don't think like the race for graphic fidelity is not really a thing anymore, but the race for memory is, as games get bigger and like more broad, like open world games and stuff. I wonder how long it's going to stay relevant in an ever expanding world where, you know, the RAM usage of these machines is just getting kind of crazy.
I think that's probably the greatest concern that anybody could have for the Switch right now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that there are two things that'll combat that. I'm hoping one of them is that the indie games continue to keep it afloat through those kind of like hard times that it may run into. And the other thing is just that Nintendo releases an updated version in like a few years that has like slightly better tech built into it, and they're just like, oh, it's like a second generation Switch.
That's true.
And
actually.
they don't. Yeah, they like don't even market it as a new console. They're just like, look, the battery life is longer.
The Super Switch.
And it has more memory, and the battery life is longer, and it has a bigger hard drive. And that's it. That's the only way it's different.
Yeah, and you could actually just sell just the unit. You could have it still work with all the other stuff. Yep. Just sell a little, like the rectangle that is the whole machine.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping they will do.
That would actually make sense, and they could do that a couple times, really. Like they could kind of pull a DS kind of situation with it.
Yep. And there's there's precedent for that having worked with the DS. So I could see it totally working.
They'll probably have a horrible naming scheme like they always do. It'll be the new Switch XL, whatever. Yeah.
Ugh.
New Super Switch.
Gross. Get it out of here. So Nintendo was a company that did good 2017, but there are two companies that did not so good in 2017.
Well, they did good in terms of money.
Yeah, they did good in terms of their earnings.
Yeah.
But the companies I'm speaking about are Activision and EA, and the topic that we are moving on to is one of the big things of 2017, microtransactions.
No.
Or as it's known in the industry, recurrent consumer spending.
I'm so happy that you found that again.
Yes, I did. I found it. Yeah. That little insider jargon that was in one of the articles.
Recurrent consumer spending. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful word salad right there.
Yeah, so the first hints at industry grossness, and this wasn't microtransactions specifically, but this was just Activision sort of setting the precedent for how industries were going to act this year. It was in February 10th, there was a story about how Activision, oh my gosh, Activision Blizzard sets new earnings record. Isn't this great? Whoa. And then the byline of the story is, and in response to that, they've enacted a huge round of layoffs.
Yeah.
So
when was this? This was in February? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it was them saying, look, Overwatch is massively popular. It's great. We've got a new Call of Duty World War II game coming out in the fall. It's going to be a really big deal, and we anticipate tons of sales. Destiny 2 is coming out. We anticipate tons of sales with that. So what are we going to do? Lay off a bunch of people.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, no, why would it make sense to, like, because the thing that is horrible and baffling about this is that most of the time, as we know, companies will expand and contract.
Sure.
So, and I think Blizzard is one of the only exceptions to this where they just keep expanding.
Yeah.
But most of the other Activision companies are going to take on a bunch of people when they're making a project. Then when that project comes out, they're going to cut some of those people. They're going to keep some of them on for new content for their recurrent consumer spending projects. But they're still, going to keep laying people off. That's going to be a trend. But the reason why it was so egregious in February when this happened is they were ramping up to several new projects. So they should have been expanding, and they had the money to expand, but instead decided to lay people off and put them out of work.
Well, Bobby Kodak's got to get a new pair of glasses. Needs a new pair of shoes. A $5 billion pair of shoes. Yeah, I mean, like, that's a thing, like, specifically in the video game industry. It's not as bad as it used to be, but there's always been this trend of gearing up towards the the crunch of game development, you'd hire on a shit ton of people, get the game done, and then like in the like a couple of years ago, it used to be like lay everyone off, like just get rid of everyone in the studio. It has gotten better. It's gotten a little bit more sustainable, but yeah, that's Activision's always cutting corners, always trying to get penny pinchers. It's crazy.
Yep. Activision continued to do some things that were worrying when they put forth a bunch of patents.
Yeah, when they did their evil genius shit.
Yeah, so they started trying to figure out. They put forth a patent that was like, "Hey, when you go into a multiplayer match with our game, an algorithm will pair you up with a player that has an item that you do not have, but you would probably want based on the way you play the game. And then after this player beats you with this item, you will be advertised how to buy that item for a small fee after the match." And now, we don't, as of yet, they have not actually put this into any of their games, but I would totally assume that this will be in Destiny 2, like next year.
Probably. Or they'll sell the algorithm to other people. They might keep it priority, like in-house or whatever, but they could sell it to other companies too.
Yeah.
It's just, it was getting real bad there. I think it did kind of have a bit of a turnaround, what with all the EA crash and burn and kind of people repenting against microtransactions. But yeah, it was like, for a couple weeks there, it was like watching a Bond villain come up with this shit sometimes. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, definitely. The Destiny 2 continued to have big microtransaction problems. There was a whole bunch of controversies that popped up where things that had been free to get through advancement in Destiny 1 were now put behind paywalls. People were not happy about that. And some of those decisions were walked back, but not most of them. And then, finally, the big egregious Destiny thing was that Curse of Osiris, the expansion pack, came out, and not only got middling reviews, but more importantly, took a bunch of content that you could, like endgame content that you had to be max level to be able to play in base Destiny 2. The expansion pack raised the level max, but you could only get to the new level max by buying the expansion pack, and now you no longer had access to the endgame content because you weren't max level. So in order to get content back that you had been playing prior to the release of the expansion, you had to buy the expansion.
Yeah.
And again, people were not happy about this for some reason.
I wonder why.
So that didn't go very well for them, and they got a lot of flack for it, and they walked a bunch of it back. Although I don't think all of it. I actually don't exactly remember how that all got resolved, which is shame on me because that was like the beginning of this month.
Right.
This news happened.
There's been a lot of shit news in the past couple months, so it's hard to remember every little the codices of every story.
Let's see, what else was there for more microtransaction stuff? There was...
Well, you had good old fucking Battlefront 2.
Yeah, I think there was another thing before that. Oh, I can't remember what this article was about. I have an article up here, and I don't remember what it was about. It was... okay, now I remember. Ubisoft. Nah, it's Ubisoft. Decided, one of their big things this year that they did was, at the beginning of the year, everyone was pretty much certain that Vivendi was going to swallow them up.
Yeah.
By the end of the year. There was even a thing where when I reported on E3, there was a whole thing with how the CEO of Ubisoft came out on stage.
Yves Guillemot.
Yes. And he, gave a little speech. He introduced to the Mario Rabbids game.
Fucking crazy, yeah.
Which ended up being a great success.
Yes, it did really well.
It was, and when I reported on the time, I said, "Ooh, this is sad. Because this is like his last E3. Because
right.
He's probably not going to be around next year when the company's purchased from him." But throughout this whole year, they have managed to fight off Vivendi tooth and nail and have maintained control of their company.
Yeah, good for them, I say.
Yeah, and one of the ways they did that, unfortunately, is really dialing up microtransactions, because they realized, like, okay, we just need to make money. We need to make money so that we can buy more of our stock.
Right.
And they were like, well, how do we make the most money? Let's look at our revenue charts. And their revenue charts are like, oh, digital in 2015 was, what was it? Was 26% of our revenue, and digital in 2016 was 32% of our revenue, and digital in 2017 was 50% of our revenue.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. Oh, player recurring investment is one of the ways they describe that, which is also fantastic industry jargon.
Yeah, that seems like a proprietary term from Ubisoft.
Got a little trademark on it.
Yep.
So it's unfortunate that that's the route they took, but I guess the end result is good. And then we have the last thing that we've been hinting at with this microtransaction stuff is Battlefront. Actually, if you want to talk about Battlefront, I need to run and grab water.
Okay.
I will be right back.
So Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, it's a big sequel to the first Battlefront, and basically it was an absolute shit show for a straight week. It basically crashed and burned. When there's a whole bunch of stuff regarding how long it would take to actually unlock some of the heroes, and people had found out that it would take like an insane, untenable amount of time to actually unlock them if you weren't paying for them with real money. The developers like kind of walked that back a little bit, and they were like, all right, we'll try to make that better. And they found out that that wasn't the case, that they kind of lied. And by the time that at the end of the week, Battlefront 2 said, we're just getting rid of all microtransactions in the game for right now, which was kind of, I think, a clear victory for consumers, because they bitched enough and they got what they wanted from the game. And I think it's ultimately good, but because it kind of stymied the microtransaction train wreck that was currently happening, and it kind of.
I think it was more that the microtransaction train throughout 2017 just kept accelerating,
right?
And the whole thing with Battlefront 2 is what finally got it to break.
Yeah. It finally, it got its back broken. We did there was one show that we did that was entirely about the week that this all happened. It played out like a Greek tragedy, there were ups and downs, and it was just amazing how quickly things were twisting and turning regarding this, to the point when they finally just said, hey, all right, we're going to take them all out. Like, we pushed hard and you pushed back harder, and I think it's ultimately good. I think it's ultimately good because it shows all these companies what the limit is, and what people are willing to put up with,
Yeah, and it showed that people talking about these issues and making a fuss, making a big deal about them, can have an effect, even if it doesn't necessarily have an effect on raw sales numbers. Although apparently it did. Like, Battlefront 2 didn't sell nearly as well as projected.
Right.
But it definitely, the bad PR has an effect on stock value.
It does.
So it really the sort of final result of this was like, oh, concerned consumers actually do have a voice in all of this and can make a big difference.
Like, at the end of all this, the Battlefront 2 stuff, like, it ended up getting like got on like the morning news and shit, like on like ABC and whatnot. And
Matt Lauer talked about it.
Did he? Well,
I actually have no idea. He probably did. Because this was before he left.
That's true. Before everyone found out he was a scumbag. There was talk of that, like, Disney was concerned with how EA was handling the franchise, and so it got all the way up to the top. And that's what you got to do. You got to bitch and moan until the companies relent. It also did something that I think is always good with the game industry, is that it made a lot of developers, like individual developers, people that work in the industry, open up on things like Twitter and, on featured articles and stuff, and talk about like how they perceive what's happening, how they deal with it, what they think of the whole thing, and you get more perspective on it. Because if there's anything that I've learned being in enthusiast press in video games, is that like we can talk about video games all we want, but we don't know how they're fucking made from stem to stern. Like, we don't know anything about it. So I find it the most interesting when people that are actually do make the games step forward and they're like, well, here's actually why they're in the game, and here's what I think about them, and here's why a lot of people use them and shit like that. And that's always good to open up those kind of channels of communication, because you don't usually get a look inside the, behind the curtain, so to speak. No one looks into the candy factory, and so it's good when that happens.
Yeah. So why don't you say some things about our probably biggest game of 2017?
Oh, are you talking about fucking Murder Island? Woo!
Yeah.
PUBG.
So say some stuff.
PUBG, come to the island, bitches, where the real gamers are.
We've got technically 5 minutes left, but we'll probably go over. After you talk about this, I'm gonna blitz through some notes that I have of just like honorable mentions from the year, and then we're gonna do our RIP segment, and that'll be
our sad ending. Yeah, PUBG is the fucking best game. Lex, deal with it. It's insane. If you don't know, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, one of the worst named popular games of all time. It came out, and I was actually trying to look for it. I think it came out in March. It came out in Steam Early Access in March of this year. And it fucking blew up crazily. And it just recently got fully released on the 20th, which was last week. And it's the third best-selling PC game of all time, slightly behind Minecraft. It actually just today, I think, hit 3 million concurrent players on Steam, which eclipses Dota by like a magnitude of like 3, I think. And it's being played everywhere. It's the most popular game in the world. And like Polygon gave it a 10. For a lot of people, it is the game of the year. I'd say it's my game of the year. And that's about it. It's for a game that was in early access that looks like shit, but plays great, and is a weird game mode that's a mod of a different game. It has dominated the earth. And congratulations to Brendan Green and Bluehole for making this fucking juggernaut. That is, it is the news of 2017 in terms of straight up games.
Yeah, I think I'm especially impressed by it in the same way that I impressed with Minecraft, where it was really one person's vision, and they just built it.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and like Stardew Valley also.
Well, Stardew Valley was actually made by one person.
Yeah, Stardew Valley was just straight up made by one person.
Yeah, those like Minecraft and because like Brendan Green's interesting because he doesn't have a background in game design. He has a background in modding, and he got asked by Bluehole. They're like, hey, we want to make a full-fledged Battle Royale game. We want to come on and be the creative director. So he had a team, like Mo Yang had a team, but I know what you're saying. I think it's interesting. I was actually talking to BK Slider about this, our friend BK Slider, about it actually comparing it to Minecraft. The thing I think is interesting is that when you look at Minecraft, at the time it didn't look like any other kind of game. Like, it was just like, this is weird and fun, and I don't know why I'm enjoying it so much. But PUBG looks like a game, like a game that gamers play. It's a shooty game with murder guns and killing people. Like it looks like a normal game, and the fact that it's just that game mode that people wanted. It's not even a new. It's a new idea, but it's not. Or I should say, it's a new mode, but it's not even a new idea. It's kind of an homage to military simulators and things from days past that are not in vogue anymore, and then just updated to be more streamlined and more arcadey. And people who knew people wanted that fucking kind of game mode. Like, people just wanted a murder simulator, essentially.
All people want is to be able to simulate murder,
right? And I will say that this is more than like it's pretty much any other first-person shooter, even something like Counter-Strike. this is a murder simulator. Like, you have to listen for footsteps on the stairs above you before someone comes and fucking knifes you with a machete. Like, it's like you hear like gunshots off in the distance, someone's trying to blow your head off from 5,000 miles away. Like, it's a murder simulator. And people just really want that, I guess, to get the stress out of the year. So we'll see.
Of 2017.
Yeah, just came out on Xbox One as well, so it's just going to increase, I think. And at least from hearing from like interviews with Brendan Green, it's they have a ton of ideas for it, and he's talking about they're them supporting it for like 10, 20 years and just keep on adding to it. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, just have it live the same life that CSGO has lived.
Pretty much.
Where they just keep supporting it and upgrading it, and they introduce skins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like this game has like loot crates and shit too, but I'd say like unlike all those other skeezy practices that we were talking about before, like they've always been upfront with their players and they're always trying their best to make it work. So I think they haven't fucked up yet. So I think
that's okay. So that's one of the really interesting things about loot crates. They're so pervasive this year, but it's not like it almost everybody does them, or well, I shouldn't say that, but lots of games do them. But it's really only when they try to be obviously greedy about it is their pushback. So it's proved that gamers are cool with the idea of loot crates. We're fine with that. We just want you to be fair about it.
Right. And
like, it's not too much to ask.
And don't do anything that involves messing with the gameplay of the game. Just have it be purely cosmetic. And in PUBG's case, it is like cosmetic to a fault. It's like, it's a brown shirt. Like, that's what you get. It's not anything crazy.
Okay, so the side notes, honorable mentions of things that happened this year that there wasn't time to cover on this show, but I just wanted to. But when I was looking through stories, I thought they were amusing. I mentioned it a little earlier, but just the Ubisoft or Ubisoft, if you want to say it the wrong way.
Ubiquitous software, that's what it stands for.
Their fight with Vivendi and all the drama that played out, super interesting stuff. Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah, oh god. Yeah, that happened.
There was a lot of drama regarding the release of that game. There was a lot of hype for it because it was the launch of a new Mass Effect trilogy. And then it came out, and then all the face structures were weird, and people didn't like it, and they were really put off by it.
Bugged the fuck out, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't sell well, and people have already forgotten about it.
You know what's interesting, too, is that I forget about it like every week that game came out this year. I want to play it because I've honestly heard people that like, you know what? They fixed a lot of it and it's not that bad of a game. Like, it's really not that horrible. And I love the other Mass Effect games, so it's mostly unfortunate because that's it for we won't get another Mass Effect for another 10 years. Like, that killed the franchise.
Yeah, there were stories about that tied into it. So it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Also, a thing that I noticed when I was looking through stories, when you and I were watching the Game Awards, the Dorito Pope's fanzine, there was a game that was on there that I was like, whoa, what is this game? And it was GTFO.
Oh, yeah.
A very poorly named co-op shooter from the people who made Payday 2. And I remember seeing that trailer and being like, this is interesting. I had no idea this was being made. And then I looked back through the articles, and I reported on an article on June 1st that the team that made Payday 2 was making a co-op shooter called GTFO.
Oh, really?
So I literally, not only did I know about it, I knew like almost all the specifics that were revealed in video form at the Game Awards and had reported on them and had just totally forgotten about it.
There's too many games, man. There's too many games to remember. Get the fuck out.
Yeah, get the fuck out. There was this whole thing that we reported on for like several months about how Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, just like fucking sold like gangbusters in the UK.
Its sales were pretty insane.
They wouldn't stop buying it. It just stayed up there.
Save the Bandicoot. It's the dream is real. For all the people that weirdly like that horrible game, they really got what they wanted.
Strange
next
thing.
Next is Spyro, I'm telling you. It's coming out.
Totally. And it's interesting because that was also kind of like there's been this resurgence of old school 3D platformers, and most of them like have been really underwhelming, like Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah.
Or just haven't sold particularly well, with Crash Bandicoot being the one exception.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mario Odyssey.
Well, but that's not a remake of an old game. That's
True.
the thing.
That's true. Yeah.
That's a new game. So I kind of don't put it in that category, but I just mean like, because Yooka-Laylee is technically also a new game, but it's not really a new game. It's Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, it's Banjo-Kazooie in the Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
Quick side note, I just realized that I saw this porn star the other day that had a Spyro the Dragon tattoo, and it just made me feel really old. That's all I had to say on that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, the other big thing that went on for several weeks this past year was the Alex Mauer controversy.
The saga of Alex Mauer.
The saga of Alex Mauer. For those who don't remember, this was kind of a slow burn news story with this game music like chiptune composer who was hired to work on this Kickstarter Darling project. And when it was in early access on Steam, the composer basically flipped their shit and said, "Hey, you don't have the right to use any of my music. I'm gonna make you take down that game." And then they had to take down the game, and then they ended up the and they were like, "Hey, no, we commissioned this music and already paid for it. We didn't make you a deal to get royalties." And the composer was like, "No, I should get royalties anyway. That's the law." And then the Imagos, I believe, the people who made Star Mazer, were like, "Is that the law? Let's go to court and find out." And there was this whole thing where Imagos is a very small company. I mean, they had to kickstart their games, so they set up like a GoFundMe to get the funds to hire a lawyer, and then like the Nerd Internet's lawyer, whose name is escaping me.
Well, the copyright lawyer guy?
Yeah, that guy was the one they got to represent them. And he's been doing updates on his YouTube channel about how the court case has been going and all this stuff. And there's been all these crazy things pertaining to Mauer and like their personal life and how that keeps getting involved, which I'm not even going to go into right now. And then there were death threats on both sides, and it became this whole mess. Mm-hmm. The most recent update to that I have read, which admittedly is a couple weeks ago, was that Mauer signed I forgot what it's called, but like not a contract, but like a legal document with Imagos saying like, "Okay, I give up."
Oh, really?
And then they set a court date to sort of certify that with a judge. Mm-hmm. And Mauer chose not to show up. So now that's kind of been launched back into contention because like the judge is like, "Yeah, you signed this, but then you didn't like come and certify that you did that." So I need you to do that.
Right.
So it continues to just be a mess because Mauer is a crazy person, is what I've gathered from that whole saga.
Yeah.
But those were all the silly sort of honorable mention stories from this year. And now we're going to get into our RIP, our list of those who have passed away.
Dun, 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 dun.
Get the hearse ready.
Yeah, wheel it around. The game industry's dead.
It's all dead. So let's see who died this year.
NeoGaf.
NeoGaf.
Yeah, NeoGaf has died after a bit of sexual abuse controversy with kind of the founding guy. I can't remember his name. They basically users and admins on en masse just kind of abandoned it and set up a new site called Reset Era, which has been doing very good. So NeoGaf's kind of gone. And I've said before that if you ever work in the enthusiast press, you realize that most people treated NeoGaf and now Reset Era as basically the AP Newswire. It's where you get the news from, more or less.
So that was a bit of a shakeup in games journalism. After that we also had the Kinect.
Yeah. The
thing that everyone thought had died years ago, but was actually still around, officially ceased production.
Right.
That was the motion. I don't want to say motion control. It was
motion control. It was
for the Xbone and there was the whole controversy that when the Xbone launched, it came packaged with a Kinect, and everyone was upset.
Yeah.
And they immediately were like, we need to increase sales. Let's ditch this peripheral that nobody likes.
Yeah.
And then sales steadily increased, and they realized that just no one was interested in buying a Kinect. And the Kinect slowly died out until they stopped manufacturing it this year.
It is funny that you mentioned that it's like one of those actors that you just assume has been dead for decades, and then you're like, oh no, they're still alive. They're still around. That's how the Kinect felt. I was just like, what? I've not seen one of those in forever. Apparently, still making them. Then we have R.I.P. Mad Cats, the makers of mostly shitty video game peripherals until they got into the fight stick market, and then they actually made some really fucking good fight sticks. I don't remember the story exactly, but I guess they just weren't doing well enough to keep themselves afloat. So
apparently you can't survive on fight sticks alone.
I guess not. The fighting game community's not big enough, but
no.
It's R.I.P. It's a part of my childhood, a part of nostalgia, having shitty Mad Cats controllers instead of the real ones. It's like, thanks, Grandma, it's just what I wanted.
I think I've got one or two hanging around with my N64 somewhere.
Yeah, totally. And we had Lego Dimensions, another casualty in the games to life market. Disney Infinity had shut down last year, I think.
I think that's right.
And then Lego Dimensions shut down, and what's the one left? Like Skylanders, I think, is one of the only ones. And Nintendo, I guess, with the Amiibos. But just go... Amiibai. It goes to show you that the games to life genre is a pricey prospect, and not everyone can hold it up forever. And we also have Gazillion Entertainment, who made made that Marvel Heroes game. It was basically like a Diablo kind of situation, headed up by former Diablo creators that worked for Blizzard. And so that's unfortunate.
Surprise, they made a Diablo-like game.
Yeah, I know. No, they made other Diablo-like games before that, too, like Hellgate London.
I forgot about Hellgate London.
Yeah, Flagship Studios, man. I was in on that Hellgate London, and it sucked.
It's interesting that they got hired for Gazillion, considering their prior projects were so bad.
Yeah. They made what's it called? Torchlight. They made Torchlight 1 and 2 at Flagship as well. And those games are actually good. Those are Diablo-ish games that are just fun.
Because I thought Torchlight 1 and 2 were Runic Studios.
Well, they left Flagship, they made Runic, and then one of the guys left and made Gazillion.
Oh, okay.
So, it's, I forgot his name, but he's one of the original Blizzard North guys. And probably, to me, the most surprising, death of the year, and probably the most surprising piece of news pretty much that I've been privy to all year was the closing of Visceral Studios, who were making a first-person story-based Star Wars game under the EA publishing umbrella, and the person that was heading it up was Amy Hennig, who was the writer of the Uncharted games, and it was a super high-profile project that got fucking canned. Got canned real hard, and out of nowhere, it seemed. But after a bit of actual games journalism by Jason Schreier, turned out that the development of that game had just been in flux for years now. But yeah, that one came out of nowhere. I did not see that coming.
One of the things, probably the biggest death, and it ended up being the least consequential death of 2017, that everyone saw coming miles away, was the death of Steam Greenlight. This is something that obviously had not been working in a severely abused system for years. A lot of people blamed it for the fact that Steam's game library keeps ever expanding with just shovelware trash asset flips.
Yeah.
Jim Sterling campaigned really hard to get rid of Greenlight because of how bad it was for games.
I don't know if he campaigned. I mean, he had a whole show based off it. I'm sure that he kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
Oh, definitely. There was also, he got embroiled in a lawsuit with an asset flipper game dev.
Oh, yeah.
Got really mad at him because he called out their game on the trash that it was.
Listening to that phone call is like the funniest thing ever, because the developer is like a fucking crackhead or something. He just is crazy.
Yep. So Steam finally took that to heart and said, okay, we're going to get rid of Greenlight. We're going to put a new system in place. And that was Steam Direct, right? That's what they
I think
called
so.
the new system.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. But the whole point was, with Greenlight, you would vote to get these games greenlit. With Direct, that was removed because there had been evidence that votes were, purchased effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And they were said, okay, that system's being abused, we'll throw it out. Instead, we'll just make it so that developers have to pay a fee, a slightly higher fee than they did with Greenlight. But then they also have to submit to us for approval. And the submission for approval thing was supposed to be the linchpin of the new system. That's what was supposed to save it and make the Steam library good again.
Yeah.
Because there would be moderation by the people running Steam.
There'd be a bit of a sluice gate to bad games.
Yes, it just ended up being they didn't care. They just approved almost everything. Apparently, it was almost all automated because they either could not have people do it because they didn't have enough people, or they just didn't want to, and they rather would have an algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Although, to be fair, probably a combination of both those things.
Yeah.
And as we saw with the numbers, Steam's library continued to expand at the same or a more rapid pace than it had under Greenlight.
Oh.
So there is now more shovelware on it than ever before. It just keeps getting worse, and hopefully in 2018 Steam will actually implement a workable system replacement to stem this. But
you know what? I think I like the garbage on there. I think I like it.
You like it?
It's
really?
it's
You
funny
like
to
those
me.
asset flips?
It's funny to me. I mean, like, if you have half a brain, you're not going to buy them. So
No.
I just think it's funny they exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that one of the big proponents of it was this idea where Steam trading cards exist, and companies that would make these asset flip games that would effectively amount to like clicker phone games would make the game, and then they would have bots purchase and play the game so that they could earn Steam trading cards and then cash in the Steam trading cards for real money, and then the company that made the game would just take that money. That's how they...
Such like a petty fucking scam.
It's terrible. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it would have been stopped immediately by Steam if Steam was not making money off of the sale of those trading cards off the top.
Right.
Because that's how their system works. So it's like, Steam is incentivized to not get rid of the thing that is the abused part of their system because they're making money on it too.
Right.
And that's pretty much the reason, I think, why things have stayed the same / gotten worse.
Sure.
So, but yeah, hopefully in 2018, Steam will straighten up and fly right.
Keep the shovelware, I say. I love me some...
Keep the shovelware.
I love me some shovelware, especially from the Wii era. It's just like, nom, 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 nom. It's just like fucking candy. They're so stupid and funny.
All those Star Wars lightsaber games that don't work.
And like the Cold Stone Creamery licensed game on the Wii.
So good.
Mwah. It's beautiful.
So, yeah, but that's it.
That's 2017.
In a nutshell.
Do you know what the most important part of 2017 is, Lex?
What?
I'm on the show now.
Yeah!
That's the biggest piece of video game news.
Whenever Chris has time between making strawberries, he is on the show.
Yeah. The rare moments.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our 2017 recap. Tune in next week when we talk once again about weekly news. Get back into the groove of the new year. If you want to check out our show on social media, feel free to do that. You can find us on Twitter at DCTF Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/DCTF Podcast, I think. Or by searching Don't Copy That Floppy.
Yeah.
You can also find us on YouTube by searching Don't Copy That Floppy. And you can find us, as I said, on chipbit.net, where we are hosted. Very, very thankful to our host, James, for doing that.
James!
And you can find us on iTunes. Our show archive is also on there. If you want to support the show, you can go to that iTunes and leave us a rating and review. Or if you have a whole lot of money, you can go to our Patreon and give us money every month to continue doing the cool stuff that we're doing and possibly expand to do more. Yeah, if you're giving to our Patreon, you get access to bonus content in which you get me and Dan talking about random stuff every month, usually not video game related. And yeah, I don't know if that appeals to you, and why wouldn't it?
Why not?
Why not? That's it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for another fantastic year of Don't Copy That Floppy. I have been your host, Lex. I have been joined by my co-host,
Chris Boudreaux.
And Chris, what do people have to remember?
Fuck you, 2017. Don't copy that fucking floppy.